continue our story. And Debbie is going to tell a little bit about what it was like when we first came here to the state of Tlaxcala. Of course, this was in 1980, and we lived in Tampico, and it's probably about a 10-hour drive between Tampico and the state of Tlaxcala. And so anyway, what was it like when we on the first trip that we came?
Well, the first time we came, it was just to confirm what we had heard from God when we were praying over that map on our little Samsonite folding table in our home in Tampico. And we came here and to the central city of Tlaxcala, Apizaco, and God confirmed in our hearts that this was the place that He wanted us. No?
Yes, and what did we do when we first got here?
Well, when we first got here, we checked into a hotel.
And then what?
And then what? Then we started looking for a house to rent, and
how did we do that?
How did we do that? Well, here you don't look at the newspaper under the for rent column. People put a sign out on a building, an apartment, a home, a house, and it says for rent. And so you have to knock on the door and hope you find...
We just drive up and down all the streets, right?
Yeah.
And looking for some place that looked empty or had a se renta sign on it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Okay. And so a lot of people were not interested in renting to us. And there was one couple that was very friendly towards us.
Yeah, there was like 3 apartments there, right, in that complex where they were?
Yeah, probably 3. And anyway, the rooms, they were really rooms. There were 2 rooms upstairs that were for rent. And this couple, they decided that we were going to live there. The owner actually lived in Mexico City, but he had left them in charge of like vetting the people who knocked on the door. And they decided that we were going to live there. And so they told everybody else the apartment was rented, and they spoke well of us to the landlord. And okay.
Did we really like this place because it was so nice?
Oh, well, it was 2 rooms. There were no doors inside. We hung a sheet over the bathroom doorway, and when company came, we hung 2 sheets over the bathroom doorway. And yeah, no, it wasn't a great place in terms of, beautiful accommodations, but it was a great place for us to start out in Apizaco. There was a space about this far under the door, and the rats would come in. I mean, I had a baby, and the rats are coming in. Anyway.
I remember it was a recreational activity to chase out the critters, right?
Yeah, well.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe you thought so.
There was a time of bonding with our neighbors too, I think.
Yeah, they were good at getting rid of the rats. Anyway, on that very first trip, Sally became very ill. She was 10 months old. She was vomiting. I was concerned, of course, about dehydration. And we were staying at the hotel, and we asked them about a doctor, and they said, well, go to the Red Cross, which was just a couple blocks or block or so away. And so we went there, but they didn't have any means of helping us. And so they put us in an ambulance, and they drove us a couple more blocks to a little clinic. And anyway, through a series of going to different doctors, Sally was given suppositories, and then then diarrhea began, and then she was given a shot, and she began to have convulsions. She arched her back, her eyes rolled back in her head, and it was very frightening, especially considering that less than 2 years earlier, we had buried our first son. And so anyway, we are headed back to Tampico after this first trip. it's confirmed that we're going to come to Apizaco, and we go to Naulinco, Veracruz. It's just a small town, kind of nestled in a mountainous region. And we went to visit some friends that we went to language school with. And when we went into that town, you could just feel the oppression.
And Sally was like recovering, right? She was doing a lot better from health-wise.
She seemed to be, yeah, she seemed to be doing better. And so otherwise we would have just gone directly back, of course. But so anyway, we go to their house, and they were sleeping in the living room, and we had Sally in her playpen sleeping, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was too quiet. It was too quiet. Not a dog barked, and the dogs bark all night here. And so I woke Bill up, and I said, something's wrong. And we tried to wake Sally up, and we couldn't wake her up. And so we prayed over her, and as we prayed, Bill saw a dark cloud over that house. And as we prayed, he saw that cloud dissipate. And so we went back to sleep, and in the morning we got up and left early for Tampico, and we had a pediatrician in Tampico who had actually studied in Wales. And so he spoke English well, and which was very comforting to a new mom who didn't speak Spanish all that well. And he said, well, Pedialyte for 6 weeks. And I'm like, 6 weeks? And he said, yeah, she can handle it. So anyway, Sally did recover, thankfully, thank God. And he said, tip to new moms, don't take your baby to general practitioners. Always go to a pediatrician, okay?
So anyway, so really, we started our missionary career with the death of our first child, and as we moved here to Tlaxcala in 1980, our first daughter became very sick. Those are things that could really discourage people from moving forward. But I think I learned that, when you're really walking God's will, doesn't mean everything is going to go just really nice, and there can be trials and difficulties. And so anyway, that is really the way we arrived here, where we have lived for 40 years now, okay? And so anyway, we will tell you more about our first years here in our next